Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. And as usual, I want to thank our guests because I know they are coming with several things that I deem very, very precious, their time. And Marnie, I want to thank you for your time because I know that commodity is priceless and the misuse of it can be painful in our lives. The second is your journey. I want to thank you for the opportunity that you have come here to present us with your journey, and you've entrusted us with this information because I know within that how much pain, much joy and strength and weaknesses. And so we want to create a space by which you can share your journey and feel safe. Thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Oh, thank you for having me. I am very thrilled to be here.
Excellent. I want you to tell the people, Marnie, about your creations. I know you have books and so forth. Tell them all of those things because I love painting you guys painting this picture. And then we're going to go and dissect. How did you get to where you are today?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, right now I have my first book published. It came out in January this year called Sparks from the Heart. And it's all about it's a weaving of threads. It's about my awakening journey, which started in 2012. It also has in it the science of the energy field. So as I started writing it, I really wanted to, or what was going on in my brain was, how can I make this interesting enough that people will want to read about the science of their aura,
Yeah.
So, so it's filled with my personal stories as well as the origin point of that book, stemmed from my final paper in energy healing school. I went to a college to study or train in the healing arts, in Vancouver, Canada. And during that time, I met a woman who was experiencing Alzheimer's or potentially Alzheimer's. The diagnosis wasn't concrete, a version of dementia. And she could no longer talk. So I got very curious about what's going on here. Where is this soul? Where is this person? And a couple very, otherworldly type of experiences happened with her at the beginning that really caused me to dig in and try and understand from a aura science level what is going on with the energy field, what is going on with this field. So what ended up happening, what tends to happen with me, is everything seems to revolve around reasons of the heart, reasons of, maybe living a life, for Alzheimer's anyway, living a life where we're unconsciously not fully embodied into our own heart, into our own spirit, that causes a series of events that creates a misalignment in the energy field. So that's one of my creations, I guess you could say, since you're asking about creations.
Yeah.
And before I had my first spiritual awakening in 2012, I was studying to be an architect. So I always had that. And I think in high school, I won, I was never good at sports, but I did win the art award when I was in grade 8. So art
that's a
and
creativity.
Accomplishment. Thank you.
That's awesome. So talk to us about this young girl. You're young. I always say, I like going back to the family unit because that is basically once we are born, whether it's a midwife, some people are in their home, some in the hospital. When we are brought into our unit, that family location, talk to us about that because that is the first space by which we are, information is being posited into you and I via our parents, family members, and so forth. Talk to us about your upbringing and how was your encounter with your family.
Well, coincidentally, I moved home during COVID. So I live 5 minutes from my parents and I live with my sister at the moment. So it's been a reiteration of learning all about those original, themes and ways of being and ways of learning on the earth plane, based on family. So I won't talk about right now, but I'll go right back to the beginning. That I grew up in a family with I'm the oldest of two girls. My parents are Irish and Scottish heritage. We live in Canada. And I grew up in the country in a small hamlet. A hamlet is a place that is 100 people or less. So I grew up in basically just a little area where there was a couple subdivisions, a corner store, an outdoor rink, And then there's 2 towns very close to that area that you could choose to go to school. And my father's side of the family were very, I guess you could say, devout Catholics, not super strict or anything, but go to church once a week. Very much, that's part of the structure of our lives. And in Canada, in Ontario, perhaps some people might not know this, but the Catholic school is part of the government's funding. So we have public school and Catholic school in Ontario, Canada, one of the provinces. So I went to an elementary school right beside a church. And, for the most part, I had a great upbringing. Catholic school, then high school in a Catholic school. And, but I try not to go into this too much, but I do touch on it that I grew up in an alcoholic family. And a lot of healing has taken place around just, what happens when you grow up in a family with addiction. And maybe my family, I find, or this has been my experience, because we were, well off, you could say, and looked nice on the outside, people don't always notice that, there's addiction going on. So that was my experience. And I wrote the book, these topics came up as well, but I tried really hard to not go into the details because I love my family and, I can talk about my personal experience of, how it creates the personality and perhaps codependency. And, one of my biggest awakening moments in the initial phases of my awakening was, okay, why am I dating an alcoholic when, I've seen how much pain it causes? Why did I fall in love with somebody like that? And that was a big aha moment to see, your subconscious reality of like when you're a child really does call in. So how you fall in love in childhood to your parents, you fall in love with your parents because we're big open hearts and we just love. That's the type of love that you're going to kind of call forward until you reach that point of being able to self-reflect. And I love how you talked about that in our little introduction there. To me, there's a science behind it that a certain part of our brain doesn't really come online till we're about 25-ish. And that's the part of us that can sort of self-reflect and consider that, hey, I can actually maybe change some of these systems within me if I do the inner work, if I start to go within. So,
that is awesome. I love that because I love asking the story because within the family unit as youngins, as they say, an incident would happen or a series of. And based on our interpretation of that incident as children, it formulates certain things, certain brain waves, certain beliefs. And based on that belief, we then, because we are familiar, that energy you talk about, why did you date someone who's an alcoholic? Because that energy is familiar to you and you are a part of it. And so you're able to draw it because it's familiar. And not until when you have your day of visitation, then you start questioning all of those familiarities that you see manifest in your life over and over that are not healthy. So that is why I have you go back, and usually have people go back because it is where we begin. That's where our story begins. The incidents that happen that then give birth to you and I, a form of us. And then at some point we then have to deal with, as you said, in your 20s, when then part of your being begins to question, your programming, if you will. So as a young girl within that situation, how did it personally affect your being in that, again, without sharing, because I do understand the sensitivity of it. How did it form you, Marnie, as a young woman? How did she perceive the world from seeing all of that behavior? And how did she manage herself in that?
Well, I think how you explained, like, we don't, until we have that visitation type of experience, we don't even know that our reality is different than other people's. You don't even question it, right? You just have those foundational ways of being, and then that's the world, and you interact in the world as such. So after my visitation, I'll use your terminology. I like it. I think the biggest noticings were the things that I had to start working on in myself is that, now I work as an energy healer. So that means that I'm quite a sensitive person. I can feel subtle energy. That makes you an empathic type of person. So very empathic human being by nature. Growing up in a family with addictions. And one of the byproducts of alcoholism is sort of that we don't process or tap in or tune into our emotional states of being. Alcohol kind of helps to suppress emotions. And that, is probably a function of growing up and, in our society at this moment in time. I think it's changing quite a bit, kind of right as we speak, but emotions aren't necessarily considered important. It's more like, just, kind of push them down and be a good girl, or sit over here, or, the children in Africa don't have food. You shouldn't be sad, instead of, you're feeling sad. What does that mean? What does that mean to you? Where does it feel in your body? And that our emotions are kind of that compass of our heart telling us what is good for us and what isn't. And that we're all unique. So we each have a unique compass, and it's important to listen to it. So I think awakening from a family with addictions into my very empathic nature, there was a lot of emotional processing. And that was actually the breaking point when I dated that person who also had an addictive personality. And then we broke up. I just couldn't cope with the processing, the heart being in grieving, and I couldn't move through the phases. So I decided to try. Coincidentally, I was in architecture school at the time. I got to go to India for my exchange, and I just really wanted to try meditation. So I went to a Vipassana retreat for the first time, just rolled right into that, not even really thinking about what it was. Someone told me, hey, it's by donation, so you can go there. And during that time, I was an atheist, and I just really wanted to fix my emotional pain. And during that, I think it was like day 6 or 7, I actually had my first sort of shift or opening back to myself, which was a vision of my spirit going through a wormhole type of thing. And then all of a sudden, for about 10 seconds, I was a little fetus inside of my mom's belly. And like if you were to take a flashlight and kind of put it on your skin, or like put it on your hand, it turns sort of that really red color. It was kind of just like that. It was this very vivid little pulsing human, like the beat of heart. And as I saw it, I was like, whoa, what is that? And then it was gone. Wow. And when I came out of that meditation session, all of a sudden it was almost like there was a vibration of angel-y kind of energy. The earth started to feel alive, and that expansive kind of, when your ears opened bigger to life and your eyes opened bigger to life. And what I had previously thought is something kind of like just an image, right? Like life is an image that you're walking through. It became this very viscerally alive, that the earth has a spirit as well type of thing. And also that there was quite obviously, what I didn't yet know any details of, something more than just the physical world. So
that is awesome. Excellent explanation. I love that your visual experience that you had. I personally believe, as you, all things have life. I remember I grew up in the church as well, and they said that the rocks would cry out. So that means then they must have a voice as well. So but because we are not aware of it, we may just think that it's just objects and so forth. But they have a voice, the plants, all of those different things, water, everything, I believe, has life within it. So here you are, you're having this experience because when you walk into the spiritual realm, or when you're exposed to it, the relationship between self and everything else changes. The awakening that takes place within one, your mind, as you mentioned, you began to try to describe your feeling after the experience. the tangibility of life, the hearing of everything, the awakening of your spirit. You've gotten this experience. I love it when you explain it with the entrance of meditation, because meditation to me, and I try to explain this to people, it is a place by which you get a chance to quiet the mind. And when you begin to exercise the breath, the breathing, I would tell them the best way for me to explain it is the breath is the entrance from the madness to the spiritual realm. It is that simple yet that complicated. But once that journey has walked, as you begin to walk across the bridge and the awareness becomes enlightened, things happen. So here you are. You've gotten this incredible vision of yourself as this young entity in your mom's womb. You are alive now. Talk to me about that. How did that feeling, how did that process, that whole thing now began to shift you? And how did it look like? Because you mentioned being an atheist. What did it do to you, Marnie, that experience? And how did you begin to govern self from there?
Yeah, well, so I had that experience in meditation, and then I carried on, moved back home from India where I was doing my exchange. And then I think I kept meditating. I was very curious about it. And then, a couple months went by and something else happened after that. There was another very opening experience where I had also started to do yoga. I was getting interested in yoga. And this is all in my book, by the way. These are like the kind of big moments of the storyline. And it's nice to reshare them again verbally as well. That I was in a bathroom stall at the yoga studio, sat down, was going to go to the washroom, look up on the back of the stall. There's a poster for a woman named Snatam Kaur, who's a Sikh devotional singer, I guess. So I saw the poster and I said, this lady looks pretty cool. Went home, turned it on one day when I was working out in the garage that we had transformed into this cute little studio space. There was a couch in there. I was working away, designing on the computer, and turned the music on, and then just had this wave of, I guess, opening, or it was kind of like, you should go lie down on the couch and close your eyes. So I did. Lie down on the couch, closed my eyes. And I think what in retrospect, knowing more of the science of the auric field now, as I've studied it for quite a number of years, that my heart really opened back up to my soul self. So that deep, visceral connection to your spirit inside of you. And I think that one of the anchor points of that, and you talked a little bit about it in your intro with the learning how to love ourselves again, it kind of comes online naturally when we have that opening back to our heart that connects us to, in the world of energy healing, we call it the divine inner child. So that part of us that is pure and just lives in the magical breath of life. Oftentimes when I bring people back now in meditation, back to that place in a guided meditation, people are usually in nature, with that joy in their eyes, that laugh that just echoes through the space, and wow, I am so beautiful. Like, why did I not treat myself with more reverence and love? Look at how, just beautiful I am, by way of not physical beauty, just by virtue of being, physical beauty too, all of it. I like that. And like, it's always all, not this or that. And just that my heart is beating, that I get to walk with these 2 feet on this earth. It really just opened again my heart into that bigger space of self-love. I guess you could call it that, self-love.
It's a beautiful space to get there, Marnie. Talk to them about it, because it is a beautiful place when you get there. Again, it's unless you're there or been there, sometimes it's hard to explain. And something you just have to experience. Talk to them about that as you were talking. Yeah.
Well, I think, just to give a little side note, I'll go back into my experience in a second, that oftentimes in spiritual awakening, it can be very mystical and very kind of foreign. It feels, at the beginning, if you've not walked into that world yet, or had no examples of it in the outer world, it's almost like, wow, what is happening to me? I can't, it's this otherworldly thing. And over time, I've learned that we can simplify it. And there's even there is a science to it. And just as some people open from the inside out, I often guide people when they're willing and they've chosen, obviously, that you can guide them back to those archetypal frequencies. In the energy healing world, we like to work with frequencies, vibrations. So guiding, and there's a subtle anatomy as well. So those places exist within our physical body in the meridian lines, in those deeper cellular, spaces. That's why the breath, we're teaching people to move with their breath back into their physical body. We can guide people, and, more often than not, if not mostly all of the time, unless that person is already really connected to their divine inner child. And in that case, they just smile and go, hey, they're, wow, look at, they're so having so much fun. Most people just start, there's tears that start coming down their face. Wow. Wow. Look at how beautiful I am, right? Look how simple life is, that simple, part of nature, part of God, part of the universe. And just like the trees bloom, the trees grow out of winter and the flowers bloom and the birds chirp, we are also that beauty, right? And that, I think, for me was the very noticeable piece, is that when I got off the couch after that opening and the crying that came through, I looked out the window and the earth was saying, you are also this beauty. That was kind of the message that came. Just like the grass is green and grows by the grace of God, you are also that. So it really is this, at first, for the first couple, maybe a week or so, I was super blissed out and just, wow, that shift from the mind to the heart. And then pain came worse than before, worse than before. But this time it seemed like it was not like my identity, it was something I could work with and have compassion for and be curious about. And I knew, because of that divine inner child memory, that was my original state of being. So the pain it wasn't personal anymore. It was more something that I could be curious about, that there was that judgment was gone, right? That sort of, part of the ego or the mind. In aura science, it's actually like there's layers of our field, and the third layer is our mental body. So for whatever reason, most of the world, we kind of grow and are taught to live within that frame of the mental body. So in that space, we can create stories about our lives, or it happens on autopilot, like you explained, from our families, from media, from school, from our environment. And when that awakening into the heart happens, it's like you have this other realm of space to self-reflect and explore. And in the subtle energy science, again, our hearts, this is the Heart Math Institute that has written this information, that our hearts are 60 times bigger and 100 times stronger than our minds energetically. So it just means that, wow, going into that space, there's going to be so much more information about who we are. We can feel more. And oftentimes, if we've moved away from our spirit over lifetimes or over just that one, first breath into the world, until the point when we can move into that space of healing, that we have to work through those things to bring them back into alignment with our original state of balance, you could say. And, it doesn't have to be like this, so intense. It can be one breath at a time, it can be 1 month at a time, and just taking each layer gently with love and compassion. So, when that happened, I tried to become an architect. I really tried. My brain said that's what you're supposed to do. You keep going on that track, but the walls in the outer world just were so obvious to me. At one point in time, I looked up a spiritual teacher, and I went to see her. And she, in that session of asking questions at the end, she said, well, you're a healer. And I reacted in a pretty intense way. I said, no, I'm an architect. Like as if, you're not going to break down my foundations right now. This is my life. But over time, it sort of unraveled, and I decided to go train in energy healing. And I took it very literally, I guess, because I'm an energy healer. That's quite a literal version of a healer. But of course, healing can be in all facets, can just be by way of a compassionate conversation. Can be, it doesn't have to be like this intense thing. This is my journey anyway.
I think the energy is already in the words. It's because it's a sound wave. It is part of. So I think it's all of it is energetic. Simply because we are energy housed within the body, and I say the reason why we're housed here, it is by way we get a chance to experience the human experience on this planet. Once we shed this body, we can then move forward into a different realm, a different reality, if you will. But this body keeps us here to experience certain things. I think it's for us to learn who we are and how beautiful we are. And I think as more and more people get that revelation and they see the preciousness of how I always describe it as so unique that it's, and people have heard me say this before, I'm an endangered species. And I think once I got that revelation that I was an endangered species, that I was so special that once I vacated this body, my retina is gone with me because that travels with my skin. As far as my fingerprint has disappeared from this planet, my voice recognition has been disappeared from this. So I'm so special. I'm one of a kind. With that revelation, then, it opened my eyes that every single one is that. It's just some people are at a different level of knowing where they're at, but every single one is just as special as I am. So then, as one that has been awakened to that, I have my responsibility falls on me, not on that person, to love them regardless of how they behave. It doesn't matter because they are precious and they don't know that, but I know that. And so I have to, as you say, respond from the heart. I have to love them. Jesus makes a statement, love your enemies. Wow, what a beautiful, powerful thing, because you have to look from someplace else to be able to do that. You can't do that from the physical point of view because you'll kill them. And so you will respond just as they are. But if you have an open heart, as you say, Marnie, you're coming from that space of where your heart is more open, you are going to love them. When you see the value that is within them, you will hug them, you will want to hold them, and they will then have to be in a space to cause them to say, why is she always this way? And it'll crack whatever, veneer they have. So here you are, you're getting some really powerful relationship awakening to self. As you begin to move forward, Marnie, and you're seeing who you are, and you surrendered to the energy healing and learning about the heart. Once you made that surrender, how was that? Because that is a difficult place to move from where you're programmed. This is where you have to be. Why? We are programmed because they're telling you that security is in there. And if you step out of that, you will be not going to have that security. How did that transition happen to you? How did you feel? Because you made the statement, I am an architect, and you announced yourself. How did that unhooking took place? Because it is a shift, and some things has to happen in there. As even though all the doors are closing, you still have to make that internal decision as to, okay, I surrender. I will then move forward. How was that? What was the final thing that caused you to go, I need to surrender to this? And how did you do it?
Well, something's coming from my brain that my mother, who I love dearly, who's this beautiful person, used to call something. This was what she used to call me, or an expression of my being was Marnie's trail. So wherever I went, there was a trail of things I left behind. And I think I'm still like that a little in a way. So after I had that meeting with the spiritual teacher, I tried to get a job in architecture for a little while. It didn't work. And then I worked at a restaurant for a summer a little more than a summer, and then applied to energy healing school. So after a week, I got into that school, still having the architecture piece in my brain, definitely was still there in my mind. I was like, I'll just kind of explore this and see what this is all about, this energy healing idea of healing. And I got into the school, and in a very synchronistic series of events within a week, somebody was going to take my apartment in Ottawa where I was living because the school was in Vancouver. Someone was able to take my apartment for the exact amount of time I needed them to. A friend said, I'll rent your underground parking lot space because I need that space in the city. And then another friend popped up and said, well, I'll take your cat for you. No problem. I'll watch Shanti. So that seemed like, wow, everything seems to just be very easeful right now. And I'm just going to go with this. So I decided to take the bus because I was, on a budget, and I took the bus from Ottawa to Vancouver. This is like a 3-day trip, no stopping. You sleep in the bus, and definitely that was an interesting experience. And then made my way to the school, and that, I think the environment of being around other people that were in that space of their heart and maybe in that working into those spiritual dimensions of life's experience drastically just brought me into that realm, because I just felt like I was at home, and there's so much to explore and so much to learn and all these new teachings that, I think a big thing for a lot of people is like, why didn't I know this before? Why didn't people tell me, that I was a soul in a body? Like, why did no one tell me this? But it's just the way the world is, and we all open up in our own time. So there I am in the energy healing school, and I remember this very specific moment. So back to your question, where I had hanging up on my coat hanger right close to the door to leave my little apartment, my black jacket with a carry bag that fits a laptop, very serious looking person, very much professional. And then the other side, there was a flowy, flowery kind of shawl thing. And I just went, okay, here's my choice point. Where am I going?
That is awesome.
And I chose the flowy, fluid one, the airy fairy version for the architecture brain inside of me. And, that was it. And I do have to say as well, I think that oftentimes when we're moving into like those new spheres of our purpose, or where we're going to learn best for ourselves as well as for others, it's like we have to let go of something for a time, like fully detach from it. But now I can see that my training in architecture really is actually a very supportive quality to have, because now I have this vision that sees, the energy field as a structure, and like, how can I make this sound, structural? How can I show people that there's an anatomy here? There's just like our organs and our skeleton and our skin, that we also have a subtle anatomy, and that it's similar for the way we work with our high sense perception to tap into that subtle energy is very similar for everyone. Obviously, there's unique ways that can happen, but that there's a blueprint, so that it,
I think,
our life experience add on to each other.
I don't think we ever give it up, Marnie. I never believe. We have this fear that we will give it up, and I personally believe it is all a part of our training. Even those things that, as a waitress, all of those things are little pieces of the puzzle that is you. Especially like an architect, your mindset is formed, and you're visually able to see things that is necessary for you on an individual basis that no one else will be able to see it, even if I'm coming into that same space. But because you have a different skew based on your background, you can bring some additional information where I may be coming from another aspect in the same field. I have a different skew, and then I'm coming from a different point of view. And then as you and I begin to share, I believe this is how it should be. As we share from my skewed space and your skewed space, we're putting this bigger piece and puzzle together going, wow, this is even bigger than than all of us. This is powerful. It's able to be inclusive of all of these different insights that are getting from different points of view. And that is a beautiful thing to realize, that when I believe we are all supposed to be working together, even though we have this individualness. I believe we also have the interdependentness. And as we begin to move as an entity together, this human experience that we're all having together. And I think we are all supposed to use it together. I'll give you an example. When I would travel and preach, and my background is electrical engineer. And so I was on the island, St. Croix, teaching and preaching. And from time to time, God would help me see visions of people. And I remember this woman came to be asked to be prayed for. And I laid my hands, I felt impressed to lay my hands on her head. And when I did, I saw fields of it was like electrical fields. And I'm looking at it and I see, as far as from a point of view of electronics, I'm looking at this field and I know exactly what's going on. And I'm looking at this in the vision, and I said, and my eyes are closed, and I said, "Oh, you're senile." And everyone's looking, the whole church is looking at me when my eyes are closed. But to me, it made perfect sense. I understood exactly what I was seeing, and I wasn't really, aware of all the people, but I kept looking at it and go, "Oh, you're senile." And I'm talking to the woman with my eyes closed as I see this field of energy going back and forth. And so I knew what I should be praying for, in other words, because because of my background, that could be used for me, and I would have a clear understanding, if you will, of what that situation was before me. And then I was able to pray accordingly, and she got healed from that situation that was there. But I was afforded, because of my background, to see that. And that is why I say, with yours, you will bring a more powerful view. With the energy as an architect, you can be able to put a different feel askew to a different knowledge, a different revelation that will be able to bring someone out from their space and grant them their healing as you begin to walk them through their space. As you're moving through, Marnie, and you could get from speaking with you, I can get a sense of your empathy and the openness of your heart and the energy that emanates from there. As you enter into the space, because you said you wrote your book, it's been a year or so. I tell people COVID came to give birth to those things. Now this thing is sitting in you and you're pregnant with it. How did you know? How did you perceive it would be a book, and how did it lead you to that? The thought, I need to put this down. How did that come about?
Yeah. First of all, as you were explaining that really cool story about the studying as an electrical engineer, you said?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was trying to figure out a joke about how, as an architect, I could always use an electrical engineer. You need to put lights in the system too. But it didn't come out quite as smooth, but there you go.
But I understood perfectly what you were talking about. It never leaves us at all. It comes with us, all of it.
Yeah. It's almost like different training in the physical world, is not less than training in the spiritual world. It's like they work with each other.
Yes, it is you.
And it's all you.
All of you. And so I've met so many people, Marnie, that feel that they have to give up one in order to do the other. And I try to tell them, no, you don't. You simply, as you stated, you just have to put one down to rest for a little while you learn about the newness of the new space that you're a part of. Because again, it's new and you're learning of it. And as you learn of it, then you will come to a space where you will look back and say, oh, I need that information that I had accumulated from my previous life. And then you are able to create this new thing. And this new thing was your book. You give birth to your story from a different point of view. So yeah, it all, people I think it causes fear when we feel we have to dump it and put it aside.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. So the book was, again, one of those synchronistic series of events at the beginning. So I was in my last year of training for school, and we had to do a final paper, and there was just this piece of me inside of me that was like, always, probably that goes back to like living in a family with addictions. Just, I always had this like piece of me that wasn't fully expressing in the world. It was like, I was always kind of nervous, worried about what other people think. And it seemed to, just affect my ability as a creator to really be present with all of what it was I wanted to share on the inside to the outside world. So with this final paper for school, I wanted to work with that idea and just be like, I'm pushing all of my energy into this. I'm just going for it. And this is going to be the best thing I can do for my, with what I know at this time in my life. And I'm just going to try my very best. And let that be the energy, right? Like not having some kind of idea of how it should be. Just if I give all of myself to this, whatever it is, this is going to be what it is. So that was a paper just on the science of Alzheimer's, what I had studied in the field of energy healing by way of other healers, and then putting in there as well my own experiences of working with this beautiful woman who was an elementary teacher back in her day. So a really beautiful soul. And I worked with her for 11 one-hour sessions. So whatever I had gathered in those treatments, I was also, overlaying that with other people's research to see, what are the themes here. So I presented that in my schooling in our final day where we all got to present. And another little tidbit there is when I was in elementary school myself, one of my nicknames was Tomato Face. So not a very nice nickname, but it gives you an idea of my shyness. And if the teacher ever asked me a question, my face was beet red. And why are you asking me? I don't want to talk. So I wanted to also work with that and, move through that expression as well. And so in that time that I was presenting my paper to my fellow classmates and to my teachers, I just remember seeing this the whole time, like everybody's doing this, like listening and just nodding their heads. And I was like, well, I've never had this experience before. Everyone seems very engaged. I'm the center of attention. Like I'm walking into a new world. And I have to tell you as well that, I guess in the non-physical world, you could say that we get spiritual guidance. We kind of have, guides that help us along the way. And I felt really called to, the day before I presented in school, to just pace my living room back and forth and speak out what I was saying to practice. And I had never done that in my life ever, like doing a speech, just taking my own free time to pace back and forth, listening to my own voice. Wow, this is very different. But I listened to the guidance and definitely helped me the next day to feel comfortable and confident. So presented the paper. A couple of my teachers said right afterwards, you should turn that into a book. Then I went home because I was living in Vancouver and my family lives in Ontario. I flew home for a garden. My mom's beautiful country gardens were in the garden show in our small town that year. So I flew home to be a part of that with her and told her about the whole experience I had, as well as a couple of my aunts and my mom, who's been a big assistant in my life, or friend, but also like spiritual support system person, you could say, just happened to tell me, oh, go visit this lady over here. She's like you. Like as I was going through my spiritual awakening, my mom would find people in the world that were like me. She didn't really know what it was, but she could tell they were like me. So she's like, you should talk to that person. She's like, and I went there and had a nice conversation for an hour, told her about this final paper that my teacher said you should turn into a book. She said, oh, did you know there's a publishing house just in the town over, and you should go talk to them. So I did that and sent them a little email. They actually got back to me quite quickly. And it just happened that their publishing house was all about women's empowerment, holistic wellness, spiritual awakening, sharing
Just
unique
happened.
voices.
I love that. Oh, your whole life, it just happened. It's just everything is just happening for you. It's just being, as you said, you're part of obedience. It's amazing what happens when you become obedient.
Yeah, well, I mean, I tell the fun parts, but there is a lot of work in there as well. So, for me, it seems like the beginning part's very easeful and fluid. And then it's like for the book, anyway, I, got that publishing co-creative contract and then had to start writing the actual book. And that was like, I had just jumped off a cliff. So it sounds easeful and fluid, but it's like I'm like flying away until then all of a sudden there's no more ground. And I'm like, how do I navigate this realm?
Yeah.
And then I usually go into like spaces of, really deep. I'm a deep person as well.
Yeah.
As a healer, I guess that's part of our inner constellation. Lots of contemplation, lots of, time alone. And, but yeah, the book was a 3-year process. And, it's nice to be on the other side of it where it's now the creative process is so fun and exciting. I love being in there, but once it's done, you're like, well, what do I do with this? Well, I guess I should share it. So here I am on your podcast talking about it. So that's the story.
Awesome. Everyone that has been listening to us, I want you to get her books, buy her book, Speak from the Heart. I need you guys to get it. Reason why, and I always tell people, Marnie, that when you purchase the book from an author, any kind of piece, and when you sit down, you are having a private conversation with that author. It is a one-on-one type of exchange because you are in your comfort zone, sipping your tea, your cup of coffee, whatever it is, and those words are filled with energy and power. And you would be amazed how those words will leap from those pages and be deposited into your spirit and change your life. And so everyone that is listening to us, I want you to buy this book. I want you to offer it as presents to your friends and give it to those people you don't like, man. You want people to begin to move from the heart. I mean, give it to everyone. Give it to, there are all kinds of, people that you can give it to, but I want you guys to support her. And I believe that her work and the revelation that she's coming from will open your heart so that you can get a different view from what you have been looking at in your life currently and others out there. And get in and buy them as quickly as you can, as I said, and offer them as gifts. Speak or Sparks from the Heart, it is called. I want you guys to get that and get in touch with her, talk to her, drink of her energy so that she began to walk with you hand in hand and change your life. Marnie, here you are. You've come out because I know you, I didn't go into much of I tell people some of those defeating thoughts that you and I play over and over and over. And we gave them permission to become the monsters in our life. And we all at some point in time, we talked about one of them being shy and the tomato face as a result of that. But I'm sure there are others. But we all have to learn how to overcome them in a sense where we take away from them that the ability to become that monster. We gave them that permission. So talk to me as to one of those incidents that you had to take back the authority from them that you gave to them. What was it, and how did you overcome it?
Well, I guess my most recent one, interesting question. I want to backtrack just a tiny bit with that and say that, they're monsters. They seem like monsters when we're, starting to explore those realms of the inner critic or the pieces of us that are keeping us small on the inside, and maybe your spirit's wanting to bust a move out of there.
Bust a move, yeah.
that at the root of it, it's like that's a piece of pain, or it's an experience you had from that divine inner child version of you that didn't get the love it needed in the time that it needed it. And it's a coping strategy. And to see it from that space of a protective mechanism for that purity of you, because the outside world at that time didn't have the support you needed, so your system is like, how can we calibrate this to keep you safe? So I think of it more like that, and that's where the compassion, the piece really comes online. So be curious about those pieces, have compassion, and let them speak. Speaking in the internal world in a way of self-reflectivity is different than action in the external world, right? So I find sometimes people get that fear of like, if I let it open, what's going to become of me in the world? But we can stay in that space of witness and really let it open without letting it be externalized. And that's where the healing world really, lives, is that space of compassionate curiosity for ourselves. So I guess my most recent one of that is just, where I'm stepping into now is presenting myself as an energy healer into the professional field, right? Like imposter syndrome comes online, or who am I to say I'm going to be a spiritual, voice in the world? Am I good enough? And I battled with that for 2 years. I find like I go into spaces of contraction. It's like that, inner exploration of the harder things within us that's going to bring us back out to that space of light again. I just pulled an angel card the other day. I like to work with oracle cards. That it was so interesting because it said, the darkness, like look at it differently. It's dark because it's unknown, and it's actually an exciting adventure that you now, the darkness is just meaning that you are going somewhere you've never been. And just to flip it around. So that imposter syndrome or inner critic of, I guess, because it's all, when you see people in the outside world and they have a vantage point that you might want to also attain, that you say, hey, look at this person so open and smiley, or whoever they are. I'm using myself as an example right now. And that, nobody placed me here other than me, really. I mean, God and spirit, of course, but I am creating this space for myself. And I think that's really what I learned recently is you think something so great and like, oh, I want to be that. But once you're there, that's just another realm of learning for you. It's like you kind of feel the same as you did before, but now you're in a different sphere where you can express in a different way. And there's that same internal, like, this is filling me up because I'm learning more lessons here. Now, how can I be of service to others in a way that's a little bit bigger than I was before, or a little more out there than I was before? So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what came to mind when you asked.
And that's the perfect answer, I believe, is the imposter. The answer, I've interviewed hundreds of people, and you're not the only one that have gone through that. I find that most of them, and as you just state, imposter syndrome is negated when you look at yourself as one that is a servant and you're here to serve. And when you look at it from that lens, that the weight of that goes away, because there's nothing in it when you're a servant. You're just serving, and so there's no expectation. And so that uncertainty that you experience when one is serving, it doesn't even exist. So that's how you answer that one. When you feel that way, say, I just want to serve, and this is what I've created to serve, and it is who I am. And so there is no imposter when you're you.
That's beautiful. It brings it back to the heart.
Yes, it brings it back. You're not an imposter, you're you. And a lot of people get there, and again, it allows those thoughts to try to keep us from not serving. The dark place, I tell people, it is a gift. We look at it wrong. The dark place is where the creator comes out. It is an opportunity for the creator that has been residing within you for such a long time that you haven't given that part of you the opportunity to come out. And so when the dark places and the darkness shows up, that's when you take that breath and you say, okay, look within yourself and say, I need to create this. And so you began to make the move to create something, what you want out of that darkness, because darkness is there to cause you to breathe and to look into what material, what is it do I want? And then you can speak to the material that you need and it will manifest. And I usually take people to Genesis. God shows up and this darkness was there, but he had a plan. And he said, I want to create a space where I can put this being that I'm in love with. And he said, what I need is light. And he said, let there be light. So then his words were released within the darkness, and his words caused the molecule to make the changes that are necessary to produce the outcome that he wants. It is the same thing that resides within you and I, because he created me. And I tell people, where were you and I when God created the earth? We were inside of him, because after he created it, then he released us and he said, it's yours. So it is that limitation mind that we have, and that has caused us to not recognize who we are. Mm-hmm. We are power. And I tell people simply, so when you're in that space, Marnie, of imposter, you are mighty, girl. It is you. You are that person, and you're not an imposter of anyone. You are you. You're something different. I am different. So that's what you tell them. And I tell all those folks, I am something special, man. I love me. Marnie, I want to thank you for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. Sparks from the Heart, guys. I want you to buy the books, and I want you to give it out, man. Give it to people. I'm going to pick up a couple myself. I have a couple of people to give them to, so I will pick them up and send them out. I want to support you, and Marnie, I want to thank you so much for coming and sharing such a beautiful journey, precious, and the power that is you. I thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Oh, thank you so much, Ken, and it's been a pleasure. You are such a welcoming spirit, and it was a great, I don't know if your viewers know this, but this is my first podcast, so a great loving embrace, and I am so grateful to have been here. And thank you again for the support of my book, and just God bless.
You're welcome, and thank you so much.